The city of New York has faced several challenges in almost 400 years since the first Dutch emigrants set foot on its land. Among the challenges encountered by the city were its role as an important military bastion during the American Revolutionary War, multiple fires that caused widespread damage to its infrastructure, riots, and even terrorist attacks. In the 20th century, New York and the United States as a whole endured one of its most trying times. The Great Depression. From 1929 through the 1930s, the Great Depression was in effect. Following a massive fall of the New York Stock Exchange, millions of Americans lost their jobs, houses, and entire financial resources during the Great Depression. In only 1 year following the crisis, unemployment rates would rise to 13 million, according to 1/4 of the nation's workforce. Americans across the country suffered the effects of the Depression to varied degrees, but all men and women did. Life had altered significantly for millions of people who found themselves financially tired, jobless, and even homeless. When unemployment rates were at their highest, roughly 1/3 of the New York City's population was unemployed, and those who remained in the new workforce typically had to take significant salary cuts. The battle with unemployment and pay deductions drove Americans to embrace new lifestyles. During the time period, New York City was no exception to the nation's suffering. Indeed, New York became the symbolic capital of the Depression, the financial capital where it began and the place where its effects were most keenly felt. The city of New York took nearly 10 years and the development of an entire federally sponsored recovery program known as the New Deal to recover from the market crisis. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt created the New Deal. Roosevelt believed that the best way to get New York and the rest of the America back on their feet was to provide as many employment as possible for the jobless. Many politicians, however, questioned his idea of pumping billions of federal money into the economy in order to assist the economy recover. Roosevelt's initiative established the Works Progress Administration, which sponsored public works projects that improved the New York City's infrastructure while also creating jobs. Roosevelt's plans funded the building of the Lincoln Tunnel, as well as the restoration of the Central Park Zoo and LaGuardia Airport in New York. In the end, Roosevelt's New Deal and the WPA funded over 3 million jobs across the country. Roosevelt had done his country a huge favor by assisting it in climbing out of the worst financial crisis it had ever seen. Whether it was due to unemployment, a wage loss, or not having enough money left over after paying their expenses, many New Yorkers found themselves so destitute that they could not afford to eat on their own and were frequently forced to wait in bread lines for meals. The word bread line referred to the lines that regularly developed outside the bakeries, where folks would wait for bakers to give out old bread to the hungry. Because of the high number of people who relied on bread lines, the city and the private investors began investing in their own bread lines, where they would distribute fresh bread to thousands of people each day. Despite the city's efforts, there were 95 reported fatalities from famine in New York by the end of 1931. Although poverty, starvation, and a lack of shelter afflicted New Yorkers across the city, no area of the city battled with these issues more than those who resided in Harlem, New York. Residents of Harlem found themselves not only dealing with a high unemployment rate, but also with workplace discrimination against African Americans and immigrants. Although prejudice against African Americans and immigrants had long been a feature of the New York culture, the Depression magnified the problem enormously. African Americans were banned from participating in over 24 of the city's labor unions. African Americans and immigrants were frequently denied employment at public relief work sites due to discrimination by different shop employees as well as foremen and supervisors. Tensions were so high as a result of the prejudice that a riot broke out on March 19, 1935 due to a misunderstanding about the treatment of a 16-year-old Puerto Rican youth accused of stealing from a white shop. By the end of the night, thousands more Harlem residents had joined the riot. At the end of the incident, approximately $2 million in damages had been done. 30 people had been hospitalized, and 3 African Americans had died. The riots prompted New York's mayor to examine the level of prejudice faced by African Americans and immigrants during the Depression. But the findings sickened him, and he refused to allow them to be publicized. Unfortunately, the riots were unable to deliver justice to the Harlem neighborhood, since its condition did not improve much until after the Depression ended. The Great Depression traditionally overshadows 1930s fashion, yet New Yorkers in the 1930s were full of glitter and style. Women's clothing evolved in tandem with their evolving responsibilities in contemporary society. Matrons of a certain age continued to dress conservatively. However, contemporary and younger women have transformed sportswear into the most significant development of post-war fashion. Tubular dresses from the teens had developed into a similar design with shorter skirts. Following the World War I, undergarments began to change to adapt to the ideals of a flatter breast and a more boyish shape. The corset was becoming obsolete, and the bandeau, flattening form, was popular in the early 1920s. During the mid-20s, all-in-one underwear became fashionable, ushering in the curvier brassiere period and ushering out of the corset. Women's sexual trends were greatly influenced by the women's rights movement. Most notably, the constraining corset was abandoned as undergarments evolved to accommodate the decade's new trends. Women wore panties instead of drawers and knickers. Floral designs and fur were popular. Makeup was fashionable, and shoulder pads were popular until the late 1930s. Although hats remained fashionable among ladies, they were steadily losing favor. Women's legs were visible for the first time in centuries, with hemlines reaching to the knee and gowns becoming more fitting. Flattened breasts and hips, as well as short haircuts like the bob cut, Eton crop, and Marcel wave were trendy. Men remained well-dressed, wearing fedoras and double-breasted overcoats. The lads were dressed in short shorts and towering socks. New Yorkers who loved drinking have had enough by 1932. For the previous 12 years, prohibition had been the rule of the nation, enforced in the city by a team of often shady prohibition officers and ignored by individuals who openly drank at the city's famed speakeasies. So, New York's mayor, James J. Walker, a regular speakeasy visitor, proposed an idea. He sought to organize a massive protest procession along Fifth Avenue, with labor activists, government leaders, and ordinary residents taking part. This would not be the first wet parade in town. Anti-prohibition marches were also organized in the 1920s, bringing many days as they were called. However, the We Want Beer procession in 1932 had more support than ever before. The case was compelling. Legalizing beer and other alcoholic drinks would generate millions in tax revenue, while also create a new business that would employ thousands in Depression-era America. On May 14th, at least 100,000 demonstrators marched down Fifth Avenue from the 80th Street, carrying picket banners, dressed in costume, and driving automobiles emblazoned with messages. The protesters paraded west on the 59th Street and the north on the Central Park West into the night. The procession was led by Mayor Walker, who looked dapper in his derby and suit. Other cities and villages hosted beer parades as well, and Coney Island held its own a month later on Surf Avenue. When visiting a place, we always look for accommodation that fits our budget. Have you ever wondered what a hotel room looks like in 1930s in New York, and if it is budget-friendly? A room at the 27-story Radisson Lexington Hotel on the 48th Street now would definitely cost you at least $300 or $400 per night. However, in 1930s, just after this massive structure was built, hotel prices were close to $3 or $4 a night. Back then, it was simply known as the Hotel Lexington. The Lexington first opened its doors on October 15, 1929, and it was run by the Hotel Lexington Corporation, which was directed by J. Kincaid Leslie. The hotel went into foreclosure in 1932, and Ralph Hitze's National Hotel Management Company ran it until 1937 when it was taken over by Hotel Lexington Inc. This is New York in 1930s. Let me know your thoughts and opinion on the comment section. Thank you so much for watching, and please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. We'll see you on the next video.